We shall commence this module by studying the need of SEZs. The need of geographically defined zones has been recognized world over to promote trade. The main reason behind the development of such enclaves is export promotion by the concentration of resources in specific areas for the purpose. In this category, the setting up of export processing zone, that is EPZs, has been a famous model across the world. SEZs represent these geographical areas wherein the special privileges are provided for the export by an country. An SEZ is broadly defined as a geographically outlined area having a uniform management with the firms located physically in the zone being liable to specific encouraging trade. This is carried out in the form of incentives of various forms. The first SEZ in the world has been highlighted as that of an industrial park in Puerto Rico in 1947. Some criteria can be identified for highlighting SEZs. These are as follows: the geographical area, objectives, incentives and activities for which these zones are created. In general, SEZs have a larger area with more integrated and liberal development policies. There is a thin dividing line between the categorization of these zones. The SEZ concept has been criticized as well as with reference to the specific privileges assigned to these zones, and more importantly have been questioned on the need of creating such exclusive enclaves. After reading this module, you shall be able to know more about the special economic zones, learn the concept with its development in the Indian context, analyze it with regard to its benefits and criticism in the Indian context. SEZs in India. Let us now study the history of development of SEZ. To promote its exports and improve the foreign exchange earnings, the Government of India also adopted the EPZ model by setting up the first EPZ in Kandla in 1965, which was in fact the first EPZ in Asia. With a growing recognition of the importance of these zones and the need to further upgrade them dynamically, all central governments EPZs were gradually upgraded to the so-called special economic zones, that is SEZs, in the EXIM policy of 2000. The SEZ Act was passed by the Parliament of India in 2000, which is a landmark in this direction. Economic and administrative purposes also offer other definitions of zones as free trade zones, industrial estates, EPZ, SEZ and free economic zones. Although the terms EPZ and SEZs are also used interchangeably, SEZs mark a major shift in the direction, thrust and approach to trade which is discussed below. Export promoting zones, that is EPZs, in India, existing in India, with Kandla being the first in 1965. These EPZs faced several challenges related to global exports in terms of excessive administrative controls and clearance requirements, lack of infrastructure and ineffective government support. Special Economic Zone Act 2005 was passed by the Parliament with the aim of rejuvenating the SEZs and EPZs. The government was committed towards creation of special zones with the objective including attraction of foreign investments, creation of economic activities in the special notified areas, promotion of exports of goods and services, use of domestic industrial technology to compete with the global industries, and generation of large-scale employment opportunities and infrastructure development. SEZ Act 2005. The Act has simplified the rules for setting up the SEZ's units. The establishment of an SEZ would be either jointly or severally by the central or state government or any person for manufacturing of goods or providing services or for free trade or warehousing zone. An area would be included in SEZ when additional economic activity is generated. Export of goods and services is promoted. Investment from the domestic and the foreign sources is promoted. There is a development of infrastructure facilities along with the maintenance of sovereignty and integrity of the country. The security of the state and friendly relations with the foreign state are also included. This area within the SEZ can be demarcated further as follows. Processing area for setting up units for activities, the area exclusively for trading or warehousing purposes, and the non-processing areas for the activities other than the ones mentioned earlier. Any good or service exported out or imported or procured by the unit of SEZ or a developer will be exempt from the payment of taxes, duties or cess under the enactment as specified by this Act. It also incentivizes the developers through a single window clearance mechanism both at the central and the state government. A 19-member board of approval is set up at the central level along with the subcommittee set up as a zonal level for the ground level modification. Central government also appoints a development commissioner to undertake the administrative controls and also exercises his powers as a labor commissioner overlooking the employment aspects. An approval of committee is also to be set up for the purpose of granting approvals to the setting up of SEZs and monetary purposes. The Act also calls for setting up of specially designed courts by the state governments to adjudicate the matters related to the civil offences within the SEZs. It also forwards the setting up of a special economic zone authority for administering the functions. Special fiscal provisions as per this Act include exemption from any duty of customs mentioned under the Customs Act of 1962, the Customs Tariff Act of 1975, the Central Excise Act of 1985, service tax under the Finance Act of 1994. Exemption from the securities transaction tax leviable under section 98 of the Finance number 2 Act of 2004 in case the taxable securities transactions are entered into by a non-resident through the International Financial Services Center, and exemption from the levy of taxes on the sale or purchase of goods and services other than the newspapers under the Central Sales Tax Act of 1956. Other incentives and facilities offered to the SEZs for attracting domestic as well as foreign investments include the duty-free import or domestic procurement of goods for the development, operations and maintenance of SEZ units like procurement of cement, steel and electrical parts, sales from DTA to SEZ to be treated as physical exports under the Custom Act, exemption from the central sales tax to the sales made from DTA to the SEZ units, 100% income tax exemption on export income for SEZ units under section 10AA of the Income Tax Act for the first 5 years, 50% for the next 5 years, thereafter and 50% of the plowed back export profit for the next 5 years. Other tax exemptions include custom duty, excise duty, VAT and dividend taxes. Exemption from the minimum alternate tax under section 115JB of the Income Tax Act, exemption from the central sales tax and the service tax, exemption from the state sales tax and the other levies as extended by the respective state governments, exemptions from the dividend distribution tax to the SEZ developers, external commercial borrowing by the SEZ units up to $500 million in a year without any maturity restrictions through recognized banking channels. An applicant's net worth should be at least 50 crores of rupees with overall investment being 250 crore of rupees.